The Death of Robin Hood, written and directed by Michael Sarnoski. So let me start with giving you the objective truth, or at least the objective truth as I see it. This film is very well shot. This film looks really good visually. The lighting, the landscapes, the set design, very reminiscent of a Robert Eggers film, or very reminiscent of Game of Thrones. The acting itself, performances across the board, incredible. Hugh Jackman is amazing as always. Jodie Comer is great. Noah Jupe, I forget his name. Bill Skarsgård, amazing. That little girl, let me just say, I've never seen her before, but that little girl that plays Little John's daughter is amazing. She sold the performance, and yeah, she deserves a lot of praise for acting that believably at her young age. So I just want to say about the story, just to tell you off the bat, if you're expecting an action film about Robin Hood, a dark, gritty film exploring your past, an old man, very reminiscent of Old Man Logan, John Wick, One Last Ride, One Last Fight, something like that, that's not what you're getting here. This film actually is the inverse, where the beginning there's a lot of action, and slowly it becomes more meditative and more dreamlike, more of a film of reflection. The trailers kind of, market it as action, gritty, One Last Ride, that type of thing. And honestly, I was not super excited for this film. I was just curious because I love Robin Hood. I love this era of storytelling, of mythic storytelling. And I'm curious to see what this director can do because he's going to take the reins of the Death Stranding film at A24. And so, I was curious to watch it. I was down to watch it, but it wasn't the most exciting thing to me. Now, let me get into the subjective. Let me get into my subjective take. I ended up loving this movie, hence why I'm making a video about this. I didn't expect that. I really did not expect to love this so much, but I have to be honest and saying that so much of what this film does is like tailored for me. As they say, it's like catnip to me. It's extremely dark, it's extremely gritty, it's extremely violent and savage, and I gotta be honest, I love stuff like that. I love when an action sequence is not just cool, it's not just fancy sword play, fancy knife play, it's also just realistic. And when men fight in this film, it feels like true survival and just you do things in the moment that are insane to watch. And I honestly haven't seen a film this violent in a while, even though, like I said, the action is actually quite small and it's towards the beginning. But when it was happening, I was like, damn, like, okay, I see the type of film we're watching now. Closest thing I could say this film is like is Hostels by Todd Cooper, which is another one of my favorite films that I will talk about on this channel at some point. So there's that going for it. And then I love Game of Thrones. I love specifically The Hound. And honestly, this film is very akin to The Hound's story arc, where he kind of like has his come to Jesus moment where he kind of shifts and becomes much more of a hero. Honestly, that's what this film is. This film is very akin to Logan, to Unforgiven, which inspired Logan. And like I said, Game of Thrones and that Sandor Clegane story. And just that this type of story of grappling with your past, grappling with your violence. And what I like is that this story doesn't fully deconstruct Robin Hood. It certainly does, it's the death of Robin Hood, it's him old, it's him looking at his past, taking accountability. But it's not necessarily like, oh, boo-hoo, I regret what I did, and I'm so sad now, and like crying to God. He actually never technically has his come to Jesus moment, even though he's at a church most of the film, but he does kind of show remorse. And what I love is that so much of this film is actually subtext, and I think that's why you cast Hugh Jackman, because he's an incredible performer and he could deliver so much with just the way he says simple lines. And that's where I think also people might have a issue with this, is that the film is very much an A24 film where it's a little bit dreamlike, it's a little bit art house. I wouldn't call this straight up art house cinema, but it has those flavors like most A24 films. But I think the film is fairly clear at the end what the message is and the type of film we're watching. And like I said, I just really love that all around. And I wouldn't say the film is about storytelling, but what I love is that there is like a sub theme, a sub exploration of storytelling or commentary on storytelling, because obviously Robin Hood is a tale or a myth, I guess. And the film kind of comments on storytelling itself, on the good, on how it's a beautiful form of art that's ancient, but also on the bad and how it inflates stories and how it makes things sound better sometimes, or also makes things sound worse than they actually were. And what I love is that, and I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but the film is called The Death of Robin Hood. Towards the end, towards the death, there's a scene where Robin Hood himself tells a story. And I felt like it was very powerful, it was very beautiful, and just all around, man, I just love this film. And like I said, if you're into things like that, if you're like me, if you're into like Game of Thrones, this type of tortured older hero that's gritty and has a violent past, but then also taking accountability and changing his ways a little bit. If you also like The Last of Us, once again, Logan, God of War-esque storyline where they have a young person they're looking after. That's a very small aspect of this film, but it does exist as well. So it has that trope. So I just feel like all around this film just has like a lot of tropes I really like, a lot of aesthetics I really like, and then it's really well made as well. So just for me, it's like a nearly like a 10 out of 10. I wouldn't quite call it a 10 out of 10 because I think they could have explored it more heavily philosophically, but I still thoroughly love this film. And it makes me very excited for the Death Stranding film because when it was announced, obviously I was very excited for it as someone who has played the game. Hideo Kojima is down, A24 is doing it, very cool. And this director, I had only seen Pig, which I did like, but I had only seen more recently his Quiet Place film, which I didn't love. So I didn't know how to feel about this adaptation. But I feel like now this film, also being under his belt as a director, makes me a lot more excited and I'm a lot more confident for that Death Stranding film. So yeah, those are my thoughts. So let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on the death of Robin Hood. And thanks for watching.